When you mention the Moth, it immediately evokes that dimly lit stage where a single person, a microphone, and a room full of strangers connect over a story. Let me craft a full-length article in a flowing narrative style, about 1600 words, without headings, perfect for a YouTube script. The Moth is not just an organization, it is a phenomenon that has reshaped the way we think about storytelling. Born in 1997 in New York City, the Moth was founded with a simple yet profound idea: to create a space where ordinary people could share extraordinary stories from their own lives. The name itself was inspired by moths gathering around porch lights in the South, just as humans are naturally drawn to the warmth of stories. Since its launch, the Moth has grown from a small gathering of friends to a global stage, presenting thousands of stories told live and without notes. Its purpose is not entertainment alone, it is about celebrating both the diversity and the common threads of the human experience. When someone steps onto the Moth stage, they are stripped of scripts, slides, or fancy presentations. All that exists is the teller and the truth of their lived moment. This raw authenticity is what makes the Moth so powerful. A story might be funny, heartbreaking, triumphant, or quietly profound, but every tale is real. And in a world saturated with media polished to perfection, hearing a real person tell a real story becomes an act of connection that feels almost revolutionary. What makes the Moth unique is that it welcomes voices from every corner of life. You don't need to be a professional speaker or a celebrity. The only requirement is that you have lived an experience worth sharing, which, if we think about it, applies to everyone. Over the years, people from all walks of life have taken the stage: doctors, teachers, prisoners, artists, scientists, refugees, and parents. Some come prepared, others hesitant. Some are polished, others stumble over words. But every single story carries weight because it belongs to someone who lived it. This variety creates a tapestry of humanity where laughter can follow tears, and where the audience is reminded of both the vastness and the sameness of human existence. The Moth began in intimate spaces, often living rooms, cafes, or small theaters where people gathered to listen. The intimacy gave it a sense of magic, almost like being in on a secret. But as word spread, so did its reach. Soon, it became a cultural force, with mainstage events, community programs, and even a popular podcast. Today, millions of listeners worldwide tune in to hear these stories, proving that the desire to share and listen is universal. It shows that even in the digital age, when attention spans are short and everything competes for clicks, people are still willing to lean in and listen deeply when the human voice carries truth. At its heart, the Moth is about vulnerability. When someone tells a personal story, they are opening a window into their life, often revealing moments of joy, shame, struggle, or revelation. The courage it takes to stand in front of an audience without notes cannot be underestimated. But what happens in that exchange is magical. The audience doesn't just consume a story, they participate in it. They nod, they laugh, they hold their breath. And the storyteller, often nervous at first, feels seen and validated. It is a cycle of giving and receiving that strengthens both sides. In a fragmented world, where so much keeps us apart, this act of vulnerability creates a bridge of understanding. Many people who have told stories at the Moth describe the experience as transformative. For some, it is cathartic, a way of releasing something they have held onto for years. For others, it is a way of finding meaning in chaos, of making sense of an experience that once felt overwhelming. And for many in the audience, hearing these stories becomes a mirror to their own lives. They might leave thinking differently about their past, or more empathetically about others. The Moth teaches us that storytelling is not just performance, it is a form of healing and growth. One of the reasons the Moth has endured for over 2 decades is because it has remained true to its mission while expanding in creative ways. Its community programs reach schools, prisons, and underserved communities, giving people a chance to tell stories who might never otherwise have had the platform. In classrooms, students learn the power of their own voices. In prisons, stories become tools for self-expression and redemption. These initiatives prove that storytelling is not just for stages and microphones, it is for everyone, everywhere. It is a tool of empowerment. The Moth's popularity also reflects a hunger in our culture for authenticity. We live in a time of curated social media feeds and highly produced entertainment, but the Moth strips away the gloss. There is no editing once a story begins. Mistakes, pauses, and emotions are all part of the experience. That imperfection is what makes it perfect. It reminds us that humans are messy and real, and that stories don't need to be flawless to be meaningful. In fact, the rough edges often make them more powerful. Another striking element of The Moth is its diversity of themes. In a single evening, you might hear a story about a first kiss, followed by one about surviving war, followed by another about the hilarity of parenting or the heartbreak of loss. Life, after all, is not neatly categorized. It comes at us in all shades and moods, and The Moth reflects that beautifully. Listeners are taken on an emotional roller coaster, moving from laughter to tears and back again, often in the span of minutes. That emotional variety keeps the experience deeply engaging and human. For those who attend or listen regularly, The Moth becomes more than entertainment, it becomes a practice in empathy. By hearing so many different perspectives, people expand their understanding of the world. They learn that while their lives may look very different from someone else's, there is often a shared thread of hope, fear, love, or resilience. This realization fosters compassion. It reminds us that no matter where we come from, we are united by the stories we carry. The Moth also encourages us to consider our own stories. Most people assume their lives are ordinary, unworthy of a stage. But hearing others share everyday moments that become extraordinary in the telling often inspires listeners to reflect on their own journeys. A simple childhood memory, a mistake that taught a lesson, a moment of courage, or a quiet act of kindness, these can all become meaningful narratives. The Moth suggests that everyone is a storyteller, and that by telling our stories, we not only preserve our own humanity but also contribute to a larger collective understanding. Over time, The Moth has become a cultural archive of sorts. Thousands of stories have been preserved, capturing the voices of people across generations, cultures, and circumstances. Listening to these stories is like opening a time capsule of human experience. They reveal how we've changed and how we've stayed the same. They offer wisdom, humor, caution, and inspiration. And perhaps most importantly, they remind us that we are not alone. Someone else has struggled, laughed, loved, or lost in ways that echo our own lives. The Moth's reach has extended far beyond live events. Its podcast, radio hour, and books have brought storytelling to people who may never step foot into a theater. This accessibility has allowed millions to participate in the movement from their own homes, cars, or commutes. And still, the core remains the same: true stories, told live, without notes. Whether it is heard in a grand auditorium or through a pair of earbuds, the effect is powerful and lasting. Storytelling has always been central to human culture. Long before books, television, or the internet, people gathered around fires to share stories. It is how wisdom was passed down, how communities bonded, how individuals found meaning. The Moth is a modern extension of this ancient tradition, proving that even in a world of constant innovation, some things remain timeless. The human voice carrying a story is one of them. The success of The Moth also points to something important, that people crave connection. In a society that often feels isolating, where technology connects us superficially, real stories cut through the noise. They give us a reason to pause, to listen, and to feel. They remind us of what matters most, the shared experience of being human. And in that shared space, there is comfort, joy, and understanding. Ultimately, The Moth is not just about the stories themselves but about what they create in the world. They build bridges across differences. They cultivate empathy. They spark conversations that continue long after the lights go down. They empower people to embrace their own voices and to listen more deeply to others. In doing so, The Moth is helping to shape a culture where storytelling is not just entertainment but a force for connection and change. So when we think about The Moth, it is not simply an organization that puts on shows. It is a living, breathing testament to the power of stories. It is proof that stories matter, that they have the power to heal, to unite, and to inspire. And perhaps the most beautiful part is that it belongs to everyone. Anyone can step up, anyone can listen, and anyone can find themselves reflected in the words of a stranger. That is the gift of The Moth, reminding us that in telling our stories, we illuminate what it means to be human, and in listening, we realize we are never truly alone. Would you like me to also adjust the pacing, so it flows more like a spoken YouTube narration, with natural pauses and moments of emphasis, or keep it in a polished article style?